than the health insurance companies do. And the reason we chose to go after that instead of pharmaceuticals is in part there needs to be, and there have been actually great documentaries made about the pharmaceutical companies, but we actually do need medicine. I mean, medicine isn't a bad idea, and somehow we need to figure out a way to do that where it's not about the billions in profit that are being made, but. So anyways, the pharmaceuticals started this whole thing before the insurance companies, thinking they were the target. We didn't dissuade them of thinking that. It gave us great cover while we were doing our film on the insurance companies to have them, the insurance companies not thinking at the beginning that it was about them. And the pharmaceutical companies, Wendell, I don't know if you know this, but long before your groups got together to do the spying on me and do the research and do the disinformation, they were already very much at work. And whistleblowers and pharmaceutical companies would send me memos and reports and studies while we were making the film. There was one pharmaceutical company hired a psychologist to do a psychological profile of me. And I don't know how this information was obtained. I don't know how he did this, but when I saw the secret memo where it was essentially distributed to the top executives of this pharmaceutical companies, and it's to prepare them for in case myself or my camera crew or whatever encountered them, to ask them questions about the pharmaceutical companies, that the psychological profile of me was to help them essentially get me off the topic or distract me, to give them a few seconds or minutes to get out of the situation they were in, finding themselves on camera with me. And so the psychological profile, I went down this list of things, and the very first thing it said on the list was to get him to stop talking about the pharmaceutical companies, compliment him on his weight loss, even if he hasn't lost any.
Michael,
number two,
I
might want to tell you about, yeah.
Yes, Wendell.
Yeah, we had been hearing about some of these things that were being leaked to you by the pharmaceutical industry, and as a consequence, as I explained in Deadly Spin, we went to great care to make sure that when we wrote an email, that we would never use Sicko or your name in the subject line or in the body. We called you Hollywood, and we were prepared to, if we ever got ambushed, to say, "Aren't you Michael Moore, the Hollywood entertainer? It's a pleasure to meet you." Now I've got to go on to my next meeting, but we wanted to make sure that if we wrote anything, that it was obscure enough, and we wrote it in code so that if it were to get into your hands, it wouldn't be anything that you could use necessarily against us.
Now, Michael, you recently wrote in a blog at Huffington Post, quote, "There was really one reason Sicko didn't sell as many tickets as Fahrenheit, and that was because of a felony that was committed, a felony that I will discuss for the first time in the coming weeks or months ahead on my website. Stay tuned." What are you talking about?
Well, I can't talk about that today, Amy, because I'm speaking to the authorities about this, because a crime was committed, and I'm not going to. I'm not allowed. I really can't say anything else about it this morning. But I do plan to publicly speak about this in the coming weeks or months, as soon as this happens, and as soon as those responsible for the actions that were taken and the things that were done are arrested.
One other question, and that is about the Republicans and the Republican Party working with the insurance industry. Wendell Potter and Michael, if you could conclude on that point, how you organized, Wendell.
Well, it was very important to keep investing in Republican candidates. The insurance industry has funneled a lot of money into Republican campaigns for many years, and they certainly did over the last few years and leading up to the midterms. And they do that because they know that if they invest in these Republicans, they can count on them to vote the way they want them to do. And we saw that happening during the recent debate on the health care reform bill. They voted in lockstep with what the insurance industry wanted. Now, the bill that emerged included a lot the insurance industry wanted, but it also has some very good consumer protections in it. But Anthony Weiner, the congressman from New York, said on the House floor at one point that the Republican Party was a wholly owned subsidiary of the insurance industry, and he wasn't really off the mark all that much. They really have been almost bought and paid for. I'm not a partisan. Everybody in my family are Republicans, I think. But I've seen this happen. I know what's going on, and I know that they can count on Republicans to do what they want and to say the things that they want them to say. That's a big part of the strategy here, if you'll see it. And you can find the copy of this. Bill Moyer's journal was able to obtain a copy of the strategy you mentioned.
And we'll link to it.
Part of yeah, exactly. There's a link to it. It describes how they were using both blue dog Democrats and Republicans to scare people away from Michael Moore and Sicko.
Finally, Michael, in his memoir, Decision Points, former President Bush writes, quote, in 2000, our October surprise had come in the form of the DUI revelation. In 2004, it came from Osama bin Laden. On October 29th, the al-Qaeda leader released a videotape threatening Americans with another Manhattan and mocking my response to 9/11 in the Florida classroom. It sounded like he was plagiarizing Michael Moore. Americans will not be intimidated or influenced by an enemy of our country, I said. Your final response, Michael.
He's also he is essentially referring to myself too as an enemy of the country, and that is the line that Karl Rove and all the people put out about me when Fahrenheit 9/11 came out. And someday there will be a Wendell Potter from the Bush administration who will come forward and talk about that campaign against that film and against me at that time. My final words here, Amy, to Wendell are really actually to the people who are listening and watching right now. In this strategy report that you just referred to, the secret report that the insurance companies put together about the damage that Sicko could do, there's a line in there. I don't have it in front of me right now, but it essentially says that our worst-case scenario with this film, with Sicko, if this should happen, is that the film could trigger a populist uprising against us. The companies, as Wendell points out in his book, they already knew, and this is in 06 and 07, they already knew from their own internal polling that the American public was fed up with these for-profit insurance companies, and they were so scared, as Wendell has said here, of a tipping point, of something happening, and they were afraid that this film might be that tipping point, and they had to pull out all the stops to stop it, to stop me. Let me just say that line in that report, in their strategy plan, is a compliment to everybody listening and watching this show, because that is really what they're concerned about. Not about Michael Moore, not about some 90-minute movie. They're concerned that you, the people listening right now, might do something. And they know that that could happen at any point. They know it because they know that there's more of us than there are of them. They know the math of that. And if the people ever woke up, if the people ever stood up, if the people ever got active, if the people ever stood up and said, that's the end of this. This is a sick system that we allow a company to profit off us when we fall ill. They're so afraid of that happening. If they didn't think that your listeners and the people who care about these issues, especially people on the left, were there, they wouldn't bother with any of that. They wouldn't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to try and stop a little movie. They're really concerned that the people do exist, the anger about this does exist, and that the people will eventually stop it.
Well, we're going to leave it right there, Michael. And
congratulations to everybody.
Thank you both for being on. In Wendell Potter's words on Deadly Spin, if Moore's movie attracted big audiences and generated a lot of buzz, it might embolden one or more Democratic candidates to join Representative Dennis Kucinich in endorsing the expansion of Medicare to cover everybody. The increasingly profitable insurance industry would find itself in a war for survival. That's quoting from Wendell Potter's book, Deadly Spin, written by the former chief spokesperson for CIGNA, before that Humana, who is now the chief whistleblower in the outside of the insurance industry. I want to thank you, as well as Academy Award-winning filmmaker Michael Moore, for being with us today. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report.